I am Damien, a sophomore majoring in communications at a university in the eastern United States. I'm not the standout type. I'm just an ordinary name sitting in the middle row, answering correctly but speaking softly, walking through hallways without leaving an echo. But this story begins from the moment I decided to stare straight into the brightest light of the entire school. Troy Bennett, and not blink anymore. Troy is famous in the way every American in high school movies is famous. Captain of the basketball team, bright white smile, school hoodie always casually draped over his shoulder. But what caught my attention wasn't the posters of his face plastered all over the gym, but the moment he stepped out of the philosophy classroom on a drizzly afternoon, standing under the awning for a long time just watching the rain fall, as if he was trying to walk through himself. We were in the same class, philosophy and mass communication, but we'd never spoken. I knew about him through the laughter spreading in the cafeteria, through my roommate's texts. Damien, did you catch a pic of Troy jogging this morning? And me, I kept a habit to myself, recording the moments when he wasn't performing, when Troy was silent. I jot short notes in my notebook. Troy leaning on his knees, sighing, or Troy sitting on the steps, eating a sandwich and frowning while reading the news. Maybe that's how love started. From words I didn't dare say out loud. The fateful day came as simply as a shoulder bump. I was rushing through the hallway hugging a stack of documents when the gym door swung open, and Troy stepped out. I crashed right into him, papers flying like snow. He laughed, bent down to pick them up one by one. "Sorry about that," he said in a warm, deep voice. "You okay?" I nodded. "Fine. Thanks." Troy handed me the last sheet, a page from my notebook where I'd written, Troy 9:17 p.m., watching the rain. He read it. I knew because his eyes lingered longer than necessary. "This is?" he asked, the corner of his mouth curling up, not quite teasing. I thought I died right there. "Just some notes for creative writing class," I lied clumsily. Troy nodded. "Sounds interesting. Damien, right?" I startled. He knew my name. That evening, I got a message on Instagram. "Coffee at the corner spot on Maple tomorrow?" Troy. My heart pounded wildly. I read it over and over before typing, "Yeah. See you tomorrow." The small coffee shop, soft yellow lights, scent of cinnamon and indie music. Troy arrived 5 minutes late, apologizing with a smile that could make the world forgive him many more times. We sat across from each other, 2 steaming lattes between us. "So," Troy said, "you observe people a lot?" "I just record things that feel real to me," I replied. "There are moments when people aren't performing." "And me?" Troy smiled faintly. "Sometimes I wish I knew how to perform less." That sentence opened a door. Troy talked about the pressure of always having to be perfect, to score points, to shine. I talked about feeling on the sidelines, like a shadow on the edge of the light. We met in the middle between the noise and the silence. It wasn't fireworks. It was like a small desk lamp shining on a book page, enough to see each other more clearly. As we left, cold wind swept through the street. Troy zipped up my jacket for me, a natural gesture I wanted to preserve in a glass case. "Damien," he said slowly, "I'm not good at saying these things, but I think I want to be friends with you." Close friends. I wasn't sure what friends meant in that sentence, but I nodded. At 20, sometimes people don't need perfect language. They need a gaze that doesn't leave. And Troy's gaze that night seemed to choose to stay with me. The days after, we started drawing new orbits around each other. Troy sat next to me in class, sent photos of the sky after practice, asked what I thought of a song. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just recording Troy. I was living moments with him. I didn't know what to call what was growing between us. But I knew one thing. I, Damien, the ordinary student in a sea of people, had started loving the most popular guy in school in a quiet way I couldn't turn back from. And that was just the beginning. There are weeks in life that pass without a sound, but there are also weeks that rush in like a train, and I was swept along without time to breathe. Getting close to Troy was like that. I didn't know when I stepped from the bleachers down to the court. I just knew suddenly people looked at me differently, the eyes of those used to seeing Troy walk alone. We didn't make anything public. In fact, There wasn't anything to make public yet. I was just the person Troy sought after practice. The "You still up?" text near midnight, the laughter bursting from stories without any real punchline. But to me, all that was enough to form a separate world. One Friday evening, Troy dragged me to the empty basketball court, turning on only the last row of lights. The wooden floor gleamed faintly like a calm lake. "I'll teach you to shoot," he said, placing the ball in my hands. I'd never thought my hand would intertwine with Troy's under such a simple pretext. "Relax your shoulders." He stood behind me, voice low near my ear, breath warm with a hint of mint. "Don't try too hard. Just feel the direction." I shot, missed the hoop. Troy chuckled softly. Again. We repeated. On the third try, the ball hit the rim, spun hesitantly, then fell in. I cheered quietly, but my heart drummed like a drum. Troy raised his hand for a high five, then changed his mind, pulling me into a short hug. Short, but a bit longer than usual. We pulled apart. Neither mentioned the hug. Some things shatter more easily when named. But not everything was soft lights and laughter. Troy carried a storm he didn't show anyone. One evening, he texted me, "Library third floor?"
I rushed over.
Troy sat in a hidden corner, hood pulled low, eyes red. In front of him was an email from the coach, reminding him of scouts, the pressure to maintain performance, to not slip up. "I'm afraid I'm just a title," he said hoarsely. "If I stop scoring, who am I?" I sat across, not advising with perfect words. I just placed my hand on the table near his. Troy looked at my hand like a small escape. He didn't take it, but didn't push it away. "Troy," I said slowly, "I might be the last person on earth to hear you say this, but I like the times when you're not the captain. When you forget your hoodie, when you doze off in class, when you're just Troy." He smiled, crooked but real. "Then I guess I'll have to practice being just Troy more." That was the first night he rested his head on his arms and slept at the study table while I kept watch, chasing the cold toward the window. I opened my laptop, pretended to work on an essay, but really watched the strands of hair falling on his forehead, like a secret I was allowed to keep. Rumors started not from us, but from small things. Troy disappearing from his friend's table to meet someone. Me suddenly appearing in seats near the practice court more often. The famous captain smiling at his phone then hiding it. In college, stories have no wings but always find a way to fly. One afternoon, as we left the department building, wind carried whispers. "Is it that communications student?" "No way, Troy's straight." Troy heard it and so did I. He paused half a second, then kept walking. But I noticed his shoulders stiffen. In the parking lot, he turned to me. "I'm sorry if this makes things hard for you." "I'm fine," I said faster than my thoughts. Partly because I didn't want him to worry, partly because I feared my truth leaking out in the words. We sat silently in the car, the sky falling like a thick blanket. Troy tapped the steering wheel. "Damien, I'm not ready to be seen as someone different from what people are used to, but I don't want to pretend when I'm with you." That sentence was a double-edged knife. Gentle yet scary. I looked at his profile, streetlights streaking across his nose. I wanted to touch, but kept my hands on my knees. "I don't ask you to declare anything," I whispered. The word love slipped from my lips in another sense, but still tightened my chest. "I just want us to be real with each other where it's just us two." Troy nodded, his eyes light as if someone had permitted him to be tired. He leaned his forehead against mine, just a tiny moment, then pulled away, like a wave touching shore and retreating. But that moment was enough for me to know he was struggling with something like me. In the days after, we built a parallel world. Mornings in crowds, evenings in quiet corners. Troy came to my cramped apartment with pizza boxes and new songs, sprawling on the rug, complaining about group projects. I warmed hot chocolate, listened to him talk about his childhood in a small town, about something he'd never told anyone. I once liked a guy on the team in 10th grade, but I ran faster than my feelings. I sat beside him, heart pounding loud enough to hear. "And now?" I asked, voice lower than breath. Troy looked at me.
No evasión.
No joking. Now I'm tired of running. The window fogged with steam. The city outside buzzed in its own way. And in that small room, something was growing without permission. We still hadn't kissed. It's strange to say, but the fact we hadn't made everything taut like a guitar string needing only a light pluck. I realized I was diving deep into something that could hurt me. But for the first time, I didn't want to retreat. Because Damien, was loving the most popular guy in school. And it seemed, somewhere between the light and the shadows, he was stepping toward me too. Winter on campus dragged on like a story refusing to end. Snow didn't fall thickly, just enough to blanket the steps and turn breaths into clouds. Troy and I learned to be with each other in the silences of this season, where people either feel more alone or more honest. One afternoon, my dorm lost power for maintenance. Troy texted, "My dorm's fine. Come over." I hesitated for exactly 10 seconds. Then I threw on a coat and stepped into the hallway smelling of laundry soap. Troy's room was bigger than mine, walls plastered with basketball posters and a few film photos. One was Troy by the beach, wet hair, smiling at someone off-frame. He caught me looking and smiled. "My cousin took it. Last summer." We sat on the floor, backs against the bed, listening to the radiator hiss warmly. Troy tossed me an oversized hoodie. "Wear this. It's warmer than any heating system." I slipped into his hoodie. It smelled of soap and a faint woodiness, the kind that makes you want to stay longer than reasonable. Troy played a playlist, all slow indie folk, enough to make time step lightly. "Damien," he said suddenly, "do you ever think about the future? Not the what will I do in 5 years kind, but who you'll dare to be." I was silent. The future for me was always folded carefully, tucked in a drawer, only dared to peek at. "Yes," I replied, "but every time I think about it, I hear other people's voices in my head before my own." Troy nodded. "Me too. Everyone thinks they know who I am." He turned to look at me. In those eyes, there was no stadium light, just something fragile, a desire to be believed. "Damien, I don't know what label to put on myself. I just know. Being with you doesn't feel like anything else." My heart tightened. I'd never heard a confession so clumsy yet precise. No flair, no declaration, just a piece of truth placed between us. That night, snow started falling. Small flakes tapped the window like trying to knock. Troy pulled a thin blanket over our shoulders. The distance shrank until breaths mingled. I heard my heart beating, not in my chest but right where his wrist lightly touched me. "Damien," he whispered, voice trembling a bit from the weather. "Can I?" The question hung unfinished, but I understood it all. I nodded before I could analyze any consequences. Troy leaned in. The first kiss wasn't like in movies, no music swelling, no slow motion. It was short, warm, a bit awkward with teeth lightly clashing. But it was real enough to silence the world for a few seconds. When we parted, Troy smiled, forehead against mine. "Sorry if I went too fast." "I don't mind," I replied, my voice hoarse. That moment was like stepping through a door with no way back. Not because we suddenly became different people, but because we'd acknowledged what had always been there. However, the world is rarely kind to things that won't stay in the dark. The next day, a photo spread in the school group chat. Troy and me at the coffee shop, him leaning to whisper in my ear. The photo wasn't explicit, but enough to ignite collective imagination. Rumors became more specific, sharper. In the cafeteria, I heard someone snicker. "Looks like the captain likes changing tastes." A light joke, but it hit me like hard snow. I pretended not to hear, but Troy saw my face. That evening, he knocked on my door. Rain melted the snow, leaving puddles glistening under lights. Troy stood there, not in his basketball hoodie, just a gray sweater like an ordinary guy. "We need to talk," he said. We sat on the bed's edge. The air was cramped with unsaid things. "Damien," Troy said slowly, "I hate that you have to hear those words, and I hate that I'm the reason." "I know," I replied, "but the worst pain isn't what they say. It's that I don't know what you'll choose." The unspoken question lay between us. Would you choose safety or us? Troy was silent for a long time. Outside, a distant car horn sounded like an underline to the truth we were avoiding. I don't want to live in fear, he said finally. But I also don't want to turn my life into a statement for anyone. I just want the right to like who I like. I understand. And I really did, though the selfish part of me wanted a clearer answer. Just don't turn me into a secret you're ashamed of. Troy looked up immediately. No, he said firmly enough to surprise me. Damien, you're not something I'm ashamed of. You're what makes me feel like a real person. Those words melted the icy grip around my chest from the past days. I didn't need the world to know. I just needed to be sure that in Troy's world, I wasn't hidden in a dark drawer. We agreed on something fragile yet strong. To be honest within our heart's scope, cautious with the rest of the world. Not perfect, but the best two 20-year-olds could come up with. That night, before leaving, Troy held my hand for the first time without pretext. His fingers interlaced with mine like pieces finding their place. We said nothing more. Some promises exist without being spoken. But I didn't know the biggest challenge was still ahead. Not from rumors, not from others' gazes, but from a choice that would force us to face ourselves. And this winter had no intention of ending. March arrived like a warm sigh. Snow melted, the ground damp with the smell of awakening grass, and bikes reappeared on paths around the lake. But even as campus donned new clothes, part of winter lingered in me. The worry about what we were building against the wind. The big spring event was the regional playoff game. For Troy, it wasn't just a match. It was a ticket, an opportunity, a bridge to what everyone expected of him. For me, it was the day I realized love isn't just hugs in dorm rooms or kisses under snow. It's watching the one you love at a crossroads without being able to carry it for them. The weeks before the game, Troy lived in the gym, training, team meetings, video analysis. His texts were shorter, replies later. My rational side understood, but the heart has its own childish ways. I started wondering, was I just a warm pause in his stressful time? One late evening, Troy knocked, fatigue trailing his steps. He sat in the chair, burying his face in his hands. I scooped him a cup of hot noodles, student savior food, placed it before him without asking. Only after half the cup, he spoke. Coach said scouts will come to the next game. They want me totally focused. No scandals. No, anything that could become gossip. I heard the word between the lines. Know us. It wasn't an accusation, just a thin scratch, but sharp enough. I understand, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. You need to protect your future. Troy looked up, eyes wet but resolute. Damien, I don't want to leave you, but the next few weeks, I might have to be quieter, peer with you less. I hate saying this. I smiled lightly, the kind people use not to break. Troy, I'm not a test you have to pass. Just be honest with me. He stood, stepped close, rested his forehead on my shoulder. Honest is, I'm afraid of losing both. Afraid of losing this chance, and afraid of losing you. I wrapped my arms around him, though part of me melted like wax. I said the only thing I believed then. Real feelings don't disappear just because someone goes quiet temporarily. But I didn't expect temporarily to feel so long. Game week, rumors about Troy and a cheerleader girl exploded. Photos of them talking in the hallway, shot from afar, attached with heart emojis. I didn't ask Troy right away, partly because I trusted him, partly because I feared a confirming answer. The night before the game, Troy texted, "Sorry, can't come over. See you tomorrow?" Just that. No familiar emoji, no soothing joke. I left the phone screen up on the table, blue light casting on the ceiling like a question mark. The next day's game shook the school. Gym packed, shoes squeaking on wood, cheers crashing. I sat high in the stands, among the sea of people, finding Troy in his blue-white uniform. He was brilliant, no one could deny. Clean three-pointers, passes like mind-reading. Each time the stands erupted, I felt proud and farther away. At the end, the scoreboard blazed. Our team won. Everyone rushed the court, surrounding Troy. A student reporter snapped photos, flashes firing nonstop. And right then, The cheerleader girl ran up and hugged him. A public, full, perfect hug for the victory photo. Troy froze slightly, then hugged back. Polite enough, picture perfect. In that moment, I didn't hear the cheers anymore. Just something in me cracking. I left the gym before the crowd dispersed. Night wind carried spring's metallic taste. In my room, desk lamp lit the half-open notebook. I wrote one line. Loving a famous person is like loving the moon. He belongs to the whole sky. Phone buzzed. Incoming call, Troy. I let it ring long before answering. Troy's voice panted from escaping the noise. Damien? Where are you? I've been looking everywhere. I'm back, I said. Congrats on the win. Thanks, but I wanted you there. I cut in. Not harshly, just tired. Troy, I saw. I understand. On the other end, Troy silent, then quick. That hug wasn't. They pushed her in. I didn't. Damien. I wish you were in my arms today, but I wasn't brave enough. The truth was simple, he wasn't brave enough yet. Not because he didn't feel, but because he was still learning not to ask the world's permission to be himself. Troy, I said, voice trembling lightly. I'm tired of sharing you with the crowd. Tired of being just the private thing. I don't need a stage. But I need to know I'm a choice, not a shelter. He sighed like his whole body collapsed. If I say I choose you, would you believe me when my actions are still weak? I swallowed the lump. I believe what you feel, but love isn't just feeling. It's action too. We were silent. Two ends of the line, two heartbeats out of sync. Then Troy said softly, almost a confession. Give me a little more time, not to choose between you and the world, but to learn not to lose myself facing that world. I closed my eyes. I understood, and because I understood, it hurt more. Okay, I whispered, but time has its own heart, Troy. It doesn't stand still waiting. We didn't say goodbye, but no plans for tomorrow either. The call ended, leaving an emptiness echoing louder than words. That night, I lay staring at the ceiling, Troy's hoodie draped on the chair like an unanswered question. I realized loving a famous guy isn't just loving the light around him, but learning to live with the shadows that light creates. And I didn't know if we had enough courage to step into the unwritten part of the story. The time after the game was like a long hallway without windows. Not fully dark, not fully light. Troy and I talked less. Our texts weren't daily scraps anymore, but short, polite, careful like footsteps on thin ice. I didn't blame him, but I also didn't know where to place my heart so it wouldn't bump into stinging edges. One afternoon, the department held a small exhibition for communications students. Hanging photos, screening self-made videos, displaying final projects. I had a black and white photo series of everyday campus life. Shadows crossing a wooden bridge, a forgotten coffee cup on steps, dorm lights spilling into the night sky. I shot them on days thinking of Troy, though he wasn't in frame. I was standing in the corner when someone called my name. Troy. He wore a denim jacket, not with his usual group. In that moment, the crowd blurred like a bokeh background. I wanted to come see, he said, voice light but firm. Things that matter to you. We stood together before the photos. Troy stared long at the one of an empty chair by the coffee shop window. What's this one called? He asked. I didn't name it, I replied. But when I shot it, I thought of the feeling. Someone left, but the warmth lingers on the seat. Troy silent. Awaited silence. Damien. I don't want to be the one who leaves and only leaves warmth behind. I turned to him. It wasn't a promise, but not small talk either. It was like someone opening a window for honest air to rush in. We left as the exhibition wound down. Afternoon fell on the lake like golden honey. Troy shoved hands in pockets, hesitating like arranging words. Damien, that night, after the game, I saw your face in the stands. Not because you were close, but because by habit, I always look for you. And when I didn't see you anymore, I knew I'd done something wrong. Not wrong, I said softly. Just not enough. He nodded. Right? Not enough. And I'm tired of that not enough. We stopped at the wooden bench overlooking the water. Troy sat first, patted the spot beside. Damien, I don't want to promise what I'm not sure I can do. But I know one thing. I can't keep living two lives without losing someone. You or myself. I asked, unable to hide the tremble. So what will you do? Troy smiled lightly, a more mature smile than I knew. I might disappoint some people, might shatter some images, but I don't want fear deciding who I get to love. I didn't answer right away. My heart wanted to rush forward and protect itself. Troy, I don't need a grand declaration, I said slowly. I just need to know, when you think of your future, do you see me there? He didn't evade. Yes, he said simply. And that's worth changing some things for. But life rarely lets people finish a story fully before testing them. That week, an anonymous post appeared on the student forum. Basketball captain rumored to be dating a male communication student. Anyone got more tea? Below were dozens of comments, half joking, half serious, mixed with curiosity, doubt, even mockery. I read every line, though I knew I shouldn't. The letters colder than any winter. And the worst was not knowing if Troy had seen it. He had. I knew because that evening Troy stood at my door, phone in hand with the post on screen. No anger in his eyes, just deep fatigue. Damien, he said, I don't want others telling our story how they like. My heart pounded, half hope, half panic. You plan to? Troy breathed deep. Tomorrow I have an interview with the student newspaper. They want to talk about the win team plans. Won't lie if they ask about rumors. I won't name you if you don't want. But I won't deny who I really am anymore. Emotions surged like waves after a storm. Joy mixed with real fear. People might react badly, I said truthfully. Coach, your family, social media. All of it. I know, Troy replied, not heroizing anything. But I also know if I do nothing, I'll slip away from what keeps me from feeling alone on the most glamorous days. I stepped close, placed my hand on his chest like confirming that heart was deciding for itself. Troy, I don't need you to do this for me, I said softly. Only if it's what you choose for yourself. This is what I choose, he whispered. And having you in that choice makes me less afraid. That night, we didn't kiss passionately like in fairy tales. We just sat together long, hands interlaced, no need to hide, at least from ourselves. I felt something shifting, not in the world outside, but in our hearts. I went to sleep with my palm still warm from his hand, and a question lingering on the ceiling. Is love strong enough to bear the weight of the world's gaze? The next morning, I stood on the steps of the journalism building, watching Troy walk inside for the interview. The sky was mercilessly blue, like wanting to expose everything under the light. I didn't know exactly what would happen in that room. I just knew we'd gone too far to go back to strangers. And sometimes, courage isn't shouting for the world to hear, but not bowing when speaking the truth. I gripped my backpack strap tight, part of me ready for the fall. Another part, quiet but sure, believed I was about to witness a turning point in the story we were living. Mornings in the North Dorm area always have that milky light, filtering through the birches, falling in long streaks on the dewy grass. I zipped my hoodie, heart beating oddly fast though no academic reason. Maybe because today, for the first time since all the chaos, Troy and I would talk as two people choosing each other. Not as a stadium star and a guy who hides in the library anymore. Troy waited for me by the limestone steps of the humanities building. No team jacket, no familiar cap, just Troy with a slightly anxious smile, hands in pockets like hiding a storm inside. When he saw me, I realized I wasn't good at pretending calm anymore. My whole body felt like stepping into void, but a soft void like being caught. Damien, he said, voice raspy from cold or fear, I'm not sure. Let's walk? Not to hide anymore. Just walk. We strolled along the red brick path to the small lake behind the baseball field. Dry leaves crunched lightly underfoot. I told him my fears, afraid of being seen, labeled, of being just a convenient secret for the most popular guy in school. Saying it aloud was like opening a nailed-shut window. Light flooded in, blinding but real. Troy listened quietly. When I stopped, he took a deep breath. I'm scared too, he said. and the way he addressed me slipped naturally, making my heart ache. Scared of losing what people think I must be. But I'm more scared of losing you. You make me want to be honest. With you, with myself. I laughed softly. Sounds like teen movie dialogue. Troy returned with a yes, but true smile. Then he did what I couldn't imagine months ago. He held my hand. In the middle of the crowded campus, amid the bustling routine of a typical American university, Troy held my hand, not as a big act for attention, but as something necessary because it couldn't be otherwise. A pair of students passed, glanced at us, then continued their conversation. No sky exploding whispers, no social disaster. Just Troy's hand warmer than I imagined. I realized the world isn't only decided by others' gazes. It's also by how I choose to step forward. We sat on the wooden bench by the lake. Troy talked about his childhood in a small Midwestern town, where everything was very normal in the narrowest sense. He described learning the perfect guy role to stay safe. Then he turned to me, eyes so clear my words slipped out. I love you, Damien. He said it simply. No fireworks backdrop, just words falling into place. I didn't answer right away, not because I didn't know, but because the feeling had been in me long and was finding its surest language. Wind blew, the lake rippled in small circles. I looked at our interlaced hands, then at him. I love you too, I said, an ordinary sentence, and the most extraordinary I'd ever admitted. We didn't promise it would be easy. College still buzzed, games would continue, rumors loved circling. But amid it all, we had a still point, our choice. That evening, Troy pulled me to the 24/7 diner off the highway, the kind with neon lights and eternal pancake smell. He introduced me to the waitress like it was natural. My boyfriend wants extra syrup. She just smiled, placed another bottle on the table, like the universe nodded permission. In the dim light, Troy leaned his forehead against mine. No need for flashy promises. We just agreed to learn being together, in stadium cheers, long exam nights, shivering mornings, and when one of us felt strangely small. On the way back, snow swirled into spots under lampposts. I thought of the most popular guy in school, once an untouchable distance. Now, he walked beside me not because he's the most admirable, but because he chose me and I chose him. Our story isn't a fairy tale. It's just real, with scratches, smiles, and heartbeats racing when hands find hands. At the dorm door, Troy hugged me tight, like memorizing this shape under thick layers. Tomorrow, he said, and the days after. I nodded. No perfect plan needed. We'd started. I stepped inside, familiar laundry scent and the soft door click behind. In the hallway mirror, I saw myself, not the guy who only hides in crowds anymore. I am Damien, loving and loved. My story with Troy doesn't end here. It's just full enough for today to close with gentle peace. And so, amid the vast campus with paths intertwining like untold possibilities, we chose the one bringing us closer. No noise, no rush, just the right heartbeat.